Okay, well, a little bit of a light crowd today. We weren't here last week, so we showed some videos. Dinosaurs, dragons and legends, heaven and earth, and the last Adam. So we haven't all gotten to see those, so we'll be watching those at our house to get caught up with the rest of you. Unfortunately, we only have 4 more weeks, and I have lots and lots of stuff to cover. In fact, where's my latest version? Is that it? Yeah, maybe that's it. Okay. Yeah, so we still got a little bit more to cover. So 4 weeks, we still got about 3 years worth of material to cover. So we're going to kind of buzz through this. One thing I guess I do want you guys to hear, I don't think all of you heard me before when I said it, I get a little frustrated with what I'm teaching here. Primarily, there's just so much to teach. I got my Pure Down tub here. You guys have seen all the books that I've had with me at different times. There's just so much to cover, so many different areas to cover. And I feel like sometimes I'm glossing over some stuff, but there just isn't time to cover everything in detail. So if anything I ever say seems wrong or confusing or whatever, I'll be happy to talk to anybody about it after the fact. There are times where I won't remember details or haven't bothered looking at details, and just because I seem befuddled and don't know the details doesn't mean that the details are not there or not true. It's just I am trying to cover so much material in a short period of time. Any one of these topics we're covering could end up being an entire college course, and I'm trying to cover, 9 of them. So unless we just want to hang out here for the next 9 years.
You'll be pretty smart by then.
There you go. And really hungry.
Well, there'd probably be more of those church things.
Oh, there you go. We'll just wait for your church socials and sneak up there and steal all the food when they're not looking.
Well, there is some now. We'll just take all the food and stay here for a week.
So the thing is, here's the dilemma I'm realizing is with the amount of time left, I'm not going to be able to hit every topic that I wanted to hit with any kind of thoroughness, and not that I've been particularly thorough in a lot of the topics that I've been able to cover as it is. So I'm not sure what all we'll get to today because we got a late start, but I want to at least cover some things. Wow, somebody cleaned the board. It's pretty. Hate to rub on it. Okay, I don't remember who all were here, so I'm going to review just a little bit. The important thing when we're looking at the Bible, looking at God, looking at apologetics, defending our faith, is a lot of what is believed and what is taught is completely based on what are called worldviews, how you decide to look at the world. Because you can look at the exact same thing, you can look at the exact same evidence, but if you've got one worldview, you're going to come up with a different conclusion than you are with a different worldview. Which, in the case of most of the stuff I've been talking about so far, has been the, quote, scientific worldview, or origin science, or evolutionary worldview, as opposed to the biblical worldview. Shoot, my eraser is gone missing. Doggone it, I got markers but no eraser.
Do you want me to get you a paper towel?
That would be awesome. Thank you. So, for those of you who are here, if you remember, I made one example that here's science over here, and as far as that worldview goes, then you've got the Bible down here. Basically saying science knows infinitely more about the world, and the Bible and science should be completely separated from each other. That the sooner the Bible just goes away and disappears, and all Christians, in fact, I don't think I showed it here. I don't know if you guys have all heard of Bill Nye the Science Guy. He was, I think, more popular a while ago.
Who?
Bill Nye the Science Guy. He is a guy who does science, a kids science show on TV, and he basically claims, not basically, paraphrased, he claims that if you teach your kids creation model, that is the equivalent of child abuse. That would definitely be this model. Bill Nye's over here Bill Nye and company over here thinking that they've got all the answers and that the Bible is just a total waste of time, and the sooner you don't deal with it, if you must deal with it, compartmentalize it, just don't bring it anywhere into what science calls the real world. The other worldview we were talking about is where people incorrectly try to put the two together and saying that here's all knowledge, and then the Bible just comes under that, and everything in the Bible can be figured out and explained by science, or let me rephrase that, everything in the Bible needs to be reworked to fit what science says. Again, evolutionary worldview, geological and evolutionary worldview. This is where you run into problems. Yes?
Shouldn't it be backwards? Shouldn't science be reworked to go with the Bible?
Don't read ahead. Stop. It's the last time I asked you to take my notes off the printer. What happens is what you have here in this worldview, you have different models. The common names for them are, we call them creation compromises, if I can spell it compromise. A lot of what those fall under end up being theistic evolution. Theistic evolution is where people say, well, whatever evolutionists have figured out about the world must be true, so we have to figure out some way how to make the Bible fit into that. So they'll use things like, well, God used evolution to create the world. God used that the 6 days of creation weren't literal; they were figurative or poetry or something like that. And that if we just monkey things around, we can make everything that the Bible says fit in with science. Other words for that are progressive creation. Nice penmanship. This, unfortunately, there's, in my opinion, a very dangerous person named Hugh Ross out there who teaches progressive creation. He presents himself as a biblical creationist, a biblical apologeticist, but he makes extreme effort to try to fit everything that's in the Bible, especially the creation, flood, Tower of Babel, origin of man. He tries to fit it all in biblical worldview. Another one that I would also classify in here would be intelligent design. It's where people, I'll say especially scientists, who stop and realize how much order and structure there is to the world. Where they realize there's got to be something more, that there's too much organization to the way that the world is constructed, but they don't want to actually admit that there's a God. So they've come up with the idea of intelligent design, where they're saying somebody created the world, we just don't know who. As I said last time, either it could be maybe God, aliens, Captain Crunch, whoever. They don't know, and their job, in their opinion, is not to know. They just want to. They just realize they're at least man enough to admit that there's some organization in the world. The problem there is a lot of what the Bible based on. I thought I had this queued up, but I don't. Let's take one more stab, and if not, we'll try to pick that up later. the biblical account of the world talks about the creation of the world as a perfect world, the creation of man in a perfect world, the perfect man, the fall of man by sinning against God, history up to Christ, who is the perfect sacrifice to be able to bring us back into alignment with God, and then the future with God in the new heaven and the new earth. Intelligent design basically says, yeah, somebody built it, but we don't really want to have to burden ourselves with all that stuff about God and sin and all that. So you hear people talk about intelligent design, it sounds encouraging because they're at least saying it didn't just happen accidentally, as evolution wants to say, but it's still completely missing the point of the history of the world. And the third worldview that we're going to look at, as William so rudely read ahead in my notes, would be the Bible is the ultimate authority, and then science, and quite frankly, everything else under there, science, finance, law, every other element of life under there, but science obviously being the big one in the topic that we're talking about. The interesting thing is, secular scientists, evolutionists want to claim that there's so many contradictions, or so many things that the science talks differently than the Bible, or that contradicts the Bible. The thing is, if you stop and look at those same items through a biblical worldview, you realize that they're just pretty much winging it and don't really, and their previous biases is that they refuse to believe God and refuse to believe the Bible, then clouds what it is they look at, and they make claims and statements that are, and many times verifiably false, but are taken to be true. So this is how we need to look at the world. This is how we need to deal with all information that comes to us. Whatever comes to us, if it, any opinion, any thought, any ideas, needs to all be brought into the Bible. The Bible obviously does not cover all of everything. You've often heard the Bible is not a science book. It is not a science book, but it also does not say anything that is scientifically untrue. So there's a lot of things it doesn't cover because it's supposed to be the all-encompassing history of man's relationship with God. So it's not going to go into details about atoms and black holes and chlorophyll. But anything the Bible says is not going to contradict any of that. One thing I do want to, I've tried to touch on some here and there in areas that I've covered, but I mentioned.
25 minutes left.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm trying to skip way ahead. One thing that. Pardon?
Oh no, you're skipping half of the lesson.
One of the things that I've also said to you guys, and I want you guys always do is stop and think about things. Let me ask you this. What are things that you think of, and the questions I'm asking for are obviously going to be wrong, but we've all had this and beaten into our heads and ingrained into our heads. What are things that you think of that are we have all been told take millions of years to make or to create? Anybody can think of any, or do I need to go through the list myself?
I can't think of anything.
Well,
I think everything was created.
The first thing we've obviously discussed already is fossils. Everybody will try to tell you fossils take forever. I remember one time we went, all your classes, actually I touched on this before, unfortunately basically everything's going to talk millions of years and just assume age. The prevailing wisdom, for lack of a better word, is that fossils take millions of years to create. Fossils don't take millions of years to create. In fact, I was trying to bring a picture in, but one of my favorite things is a fossilized hat. A mine in, I don't remember, some foreign country collapsed, got filled with water, and when they went and excavated the place, somebody's felt hat had become completely fossilized. So we can assume that took millions of years to fossilize, even though the mine collapsed in the 1950s. Its fossilization is something that scientists in the world tries to say it takes millions and millions of years, but what it really takes is the right conditions, which is usually a lot of water, and I would even say in some cases pressure, which again gets into the flood, which secular scientists disagree with. Yes?
And at the Creation Museum, don't they have like fossils of this fish eating another fish and this dinosaur laying eggs? And all of a sudden
Yes.
became fossils?
Yes. Which I do not have time to get into that, but yes, that's another thing. Another thing that you'll often hear about is that diamonds take millions of years and millions of pounds of pressure to create. Those are things that obviously could not take millions of years because they exist in the world. I've read some interesting articles just even on diamonds that basically diamonds are supposed to be the hardest substance in the earth, but inside the earth they could be easily destroyed. So the prevailing creation, biblical-based wisdom is that diamonds were actually created deep in the earth, but during the flood, when the flood happened, when the waters of the deep opened up, and even the volcanic activity and stuff like that pushed the diamonds that were down in the earth up closer to the surface. And that they had to be pushed at a very fast rate, or if they would have gone too slow, or if they would have gone too slow or taken too long, they would have been destroyed and we would have had no diamonds. Another big one you'll often hear, coal, and along with coal, you'll hear oil. Those get grouped together under the concept of fossil fuels. Again, the secular worldview says all the dinosaurs died 65 million years ago, and they had the politeness to turn into coal and oil so that we could use it now. Obviously, that cannot be true in a biblical worldview. Yes?
One time I saw that, like, however many million years ago, supposedly, that these trees fossilized and they became coal, which
Right.
is nothing.
Yes, which is what they're trying to claim. That two things, that basically things died, that both coal and oil are organic, or they're saying they're organic, that things died, compressed over millions of years, and conveniently turned into coal and oil for us. The oil, actually, I have not even gotten to read the whole book, but this is one I found interesting, called Black Gold Stranglehold. It sounds a little conspiratorial, but it's very interesting when you stop and think about it. The premise in this book is that crude oil is being continually generated by the earth, which, if there is no millions of years for that to happen, it's got to happen some other way. They're working on a theory that the world is continually creating oil, which I think is also very interesting, because as I've studied stuff with crude oil is actually amazing, because I always thought when you hear of oil refineries and stuff like that, taking crude oil and turning it into everything from jet fuel to petroleum jelly, that it was this major involved project. All it takes to convert crude oil is to boil it. All it really is a distillation process. The hotter you get it, the more stuff comes off, and then they just separate the stuff that comes off at the different temperatures. Granted, it's not something you're going to do in your kitchen, but it's still relatively easy, to the point that I even was making a point to someone that crude oil really, I called it a gift from God. I mean, it's something that we can take and easily separate and use into so many different things. Gas, fuel, kerosene, propane, petroleum jelly, plastic, what else. The thing is, if you've got the evolutionary worldview, you're going to say, well, it was created 65 million years ago and we're going to run out. If you're looking at the biblical worldview, the world's only 6,000 years old. Number one, it's not that old. Number two, there is the great possibility, and reading in this book, that it's actually just being created all the time. Because if it wasn't created 65 million years ago, how was it created? God must have had some plan or some structure there. Another thing you'll often hear about being ancient, stalactites. I don't know if you guys have ever been in any kind of caves or anything like that. They're like, do not touch the stalactites because it takes 8 billion years. 8 million years.
Stalagmites as well?
Same thing, yes. Stalactites, stalagmites. I'm thinking tights more because coming from the ceiling, and they're like, well, the water dripping one drop at a time takes millions of years to form. My favorite, again, I wish I had more material together, but my favorite example is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. has stalactites hanging down from the ceiling. And I'm guessing the Lincoln Memorial is not 65 million years old, because Lincoln was just a tad younger than that last I checked. But the world tells us that everything happens slowly. So if this stalagmite is 8 inches, that means it must have been taken thousands and millions of years to grow. That's just not the case. It's a function of water. It's a function of water depositing its minerals as it dries. Trying to think what else. I lost my page. Where did I go? In with fossils, some things that you may be hearing about in the news relatively recently is that they're finding Tyrannosaurus, I'm going to try to spell that, Rex bones that have blood cells in them. Nice level writing. But basically they're finding Tyrannosaurus bones that are supposed to be 65 million years old that has blood cells still in them. If something was that old, there would be no cellular life or structure whatsoever at that point. Yes.
And living tissue.
And living tissue, yes, thank you, forgot about that. But again, you will not hear some of this stuff because the world and the scientific or the evolutionary worldview insists that things have to be much older than they are, and then try to continue to push that that's the only way things could happen when it is not. I am going to skip past a whole lot here, kind of time I into. We've got only 3 more weeks, and I got a lot of other stuff I wanted to cover. So I didn't really kind of.
Saying that.
Yes, and I mean what I think I mean. So what I just want to do here in the next 15 minutes is just give some brief overview of the areas that I wanted to cover. Some of them we did cover really in depth. The flood, I think we did very thoroughly, probably too thoroughly. We slowed us down on others. Tower of Babel we covered fairly well. Creation compromises we've touched on some. We touched some today and some previously. I would say much more previously. The literal creation, we've covered that. Something you also won't hear often about is there are a lot of secular people who do have problems with evolution. Evolution in itself is something where people were trying to come up with answers, I would say specifically non-biblical answers, to try to explain how the world happened. And the problem is a lot of it just doesn't fit with what you actually see. Now, when evolution really started taking off, I'm going to say probably about 150 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, there was a lot that was not known and a lot that we couldn't see or discover. We just had to assume, when evolution first started, the concept of, there was no electron microscopes. There was very little in the way of, there wasn't a high power in astronomy as far as telescopes and things like that. There were just a lot of things that we just had to, guess on while we were trying to figure things out, which then became a problem because one of the big things that happened was that the evolutionistic worldview is small things are simple, and as things became bigger and more complex, they evolved into something higher. And the clip I'm trying to find, which I unfortunately have lost, is showing how incredibly non-simple even the smallest one-cell item in the world is. And I'm just going to have to give up on that. I didn't really have it. That's going to bug me.
You won't be able to sleep tonight.
No, I won't be able to. I'm just let it run, and if it happens to come across. Okay, so we've really kind of hammered a lot on the science side of things, so science and worldviews. What I really want to be trying to spend these last 3 weeks on is actually the material that I was expecting to hit originally, is I wanted to talk about the Bible itself. We have we have historically talked about everything that's in the Bible, but we have actually had very little talk about the Bible and its reliability. And that's what I want to try to cover the rest of this class we have together. The areas that I'm going to try to cover here. First of all, I'm going to I have to gloss over it because there's a lot there. Is the reliability of the Bible. Too many people, the same people who want to say science is way up here, the Bible's up there, try to claim that the Bible is unreliable. That it was written a long time ago, it was before people understood things, it was written by a bunch of naive, foolish, confused people. There's bunches of contradictions in it, and we can't trust it for anything. That is patently false, and if you study the Bible, study the environments around the Bible, things that I was hoping to cover is not only just the Bible itself, what the Bible says about itself, but historical analysis of the Bible, studying what all has been found about the Bible archaeologically. A lot of people try to claim that things in the Bible aren't true because they've never found archaeological discoveries to support what the Bible says. The thing is, as more time goes on, they keep finding more and more things that do fit with what the Bible says. There's a lot of arguments that the Bible contradicts itself, but every contradiction that anybody ever tries to come up with for the Bible can be resolved, and I would say can be resolved intelligently in the fact of it's not just hand waving or whatever, go away, it's not, but sitting down and looking at what the original text said, looking at what it's saying, big picture, looking at what's in full context, that the Bible doesn't contain any contradictions there. Another thing we try to hit is that the Bible we have very reliable copies of the Bible. We talk about things that we have from the ancient world, writings by Plato, Aristotle, Homer, all of those writers. We have actually very little material. Let's just run on that here real quick. And again, I'm glossing over, just because I'm glossing over and don't have the details, don't mean they're not there. You take somebody like Homer.
10 minutes left.
10 minutes left, okay, talk really fast. Homer wrote, Homer's writings. Let me at least grab that little nugget of wisdom, so at least it's not completely out of context.
Coming to the thing after silence.
Okay, well, can I find what you was? Okay. Let's try Aristotle. Okay. Sorry, Homer. We're going through Aristotle. Aristotle. He was alive in 300 BC, so we'll just round this out. 300 BC. The oldest texts that we have of So Homer, so we're gonna say Homer, we're gonna say, okay, we're here in the 2000s. So, I'm sorry, Aristotle, it's been 2,300 years since Aristotle did his writings. When you go and look at the material that Aristotle has written, basically what we try to do, what they call it, literary method, when you try to figure out what an author has actually written, what you're always looking for is you're looking to try to find as old a copy going back that as old a copy showing as close to when the original when the material was originally written, and you're looking for as many copies as you can find, and you're looking for completeness of that. Here, let's do this. Let's make this 0. So what happens is when they look for Aristotle's materials, they're only able to go back, I think Aristotle was about 800 years after, so that would be 800, so that would be 500 years. So Aristotle, the oldest material of his that they can find is 500 AD. That means 800 years have lapsed since anything Aristotle actually wrote or said or lived before we can find anything of his. And then when you look at that, then you've got a number of copies. There may be, and I can't remember, so I'm going to be generous, there may be 200 copies of what we've been able to find of his material, saying what it is that Aristotle actually said. And of those 200 copies, they may be, and again, I'm making things up, 60% complete. That for everything that Aristotle wrote, we don't know everything he wrote. You can take someone even more current. You can take Shakespeare. If I can spell that. He was in the 1600s. And so that means there's only been, 400 years? 400 years since he wrote his stuff. There is a lot of his material that we can't find everything for. So there's a lot of areas. So let's say, again, I'm going to pick a number out of the head. Let's say Shakespeare's stuff maybe, I guess let's be generous. Let's say 90% complete. And that's a 400-year gap. We look at the Bible. The Bible, so, and actually, shoot, I can't remember how current of copies we have. The copies we have don't even fully go to, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to be saying anything wrong. The thing is, with the Bible, what we find is that we have so many copies. The number of biblical copies that are found are in the thousands. I mean, we're talking like 5,000s, 10,000s, depending on if you're talking Old Testament or New Testament. How close you're getting to. The last book of the Bible would have been John's Revelation, which would have been in 90 AD. We're finding fragments of what John wrote going back as far as like 116 to 130 AD. So we're finding parts of the Bible that are basically conceivably a 20-year gap between when it was originally written and what we're finding. And then the interesting thing is, we're finding that stuff. We're finding stuff all over, throughout the world, throughout creation, or throughout the countries, different languages, different translations, and all of those all agree with each other. So someone will find a copy of this here. They'll find another copy over here in Ethiopia or somewhere, another copy here. When they compare them, they all match. Shakespeare's, we've got 400 years from when he wrote it, and there's many sections where we've got no idea what he was saying or what was the point, or even totally lost plays of his. But with the Bible, there's such accuracy in how it was copied that if people will say it's okay, what we know enough about Aristotle to know what it is that he was teaching, but they'll say, oh, you can't depend on the Bible because the Bible is so old and so out of date. But then they're not being impartial in how they're collecting that information. They'll take Aristotle's words, even though we only have 60% of his words, and the closest we've got is 800 is 800 years from when he lived to when his materials were, but then they'll try to say, well, we can't believe the Bible because we can only find copies going back 20 years. Now, some of the people who accuse the Bible of being fake will try to claim, well, you can only find copies from like 200 to 300 years, 200 to 300 BC or AD, but still, that's, even if you go back, that's still only a 100 or 200 year gap as compared to the 800-year gaps that are established. And I know some of this is kind of dry, and I'm definitely being big in some of my statistics just because I'm trying to cover a lot. But this is something you got to stop and think. You will often hear people say you can't depend on the Bible because it's full of copy errors, that we don't know what was originally said and stuff like that. Anybody who says that has not done any research, because if you do any research into the Bible, into our copies of the Bible, and how the Bible is handed down compared to any other piece of literature in the universe or in the world, the Bible is going to be completely unique in how that happens and how that's being recorded and saved for posterity. And on that note, I'm just going to stop. We'll stop the video.
Huh?
You stop the recorder, boy.